So listen, we're in a sermon series that we're finishing today. And it's been 5 weeks. And we've just been kind of looking at how we go through a growth season. Since we transitioned through the end of spring and into summer. Yesterday was the first day of summer solstice yesterday. I think maybe some like 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know, but it's our longest day of the year. So now I'm starting to get bummed. Days are getting shorter. So this is my Christmas. My Christmas was yesterday. My Christmas is the second Saturday in March when the time changes. But so, hey, listen, it felt like summer yesterday. It felt like we were on the surface of the sun. But it's just, that's Tennessee. We love it here, you know. Everybody loves it here too. So we just been kind of transitioning through a growth season. You know, some things just you know, you're not going to harvest in the spring. It's just not going to happen. But we're going to harvest as time moves forward. As we get to the fall, we'll see more harvest. So, and see, we're harvesting now. My wife, Tina, she's not here today. She's on a missions trip to the beach. So she left me with the garden. And like I said, you know, I'm a Roundup gardener. It's like, you know, whatever gets sprayed, I'm not doing anything else. And I mean, I get it ready with the tractor and stuff, but I'm not doing anything else. So, but I do help her. So I'm like, there's all kinds of stuff here that's coming in. She's like, well, you'll have to get it. Well, thank you. So what we're looking at today is this. We've already looked at seeding, and we've looked at growing, maturing. So that's a big one. Sometimes we want to stop at the growing and we don't feel a need to mature in our walk with the Lord. And then last week we were in the harvest. Now we're looking at the storing. So I'm going to give you a prime example of how important it is to store, because I went out to the garden and I gathered the stuff off of that was in, mostly beans, squash, that kind of thing. No corn yet. And so I go out there and I get that stuff off. There's some peppers and that kind of thing. And I bring them up in a basket and I'm like, I've harvested, but this is it. I don't know what to do, because that was never my job. That was my grandmother was always the canners, you know. So I'm like, I don't know what to do with this big basket of vegetables. So I'll call Linda Mackey. So what I want to set it down and it magically come back already canned and in a jar. And it does that. That's what's so cool is she takes it and I'll message her. I'm like, hey, Linda, I got some more. Okay, I'll come after it right now. Because she likes to get her garden, our garden, put them together. And I'm like, if it wasn't for Linda, I wouldn't do it. Because it would sit on the back porch and spoil. So it's like, I'm just not doing this or we'd eat it all right then. So anyway, Linda does all this and we just get jars of this stuff back. I'm like, this is the best gardening in the world. But see, if we didn't store, what point would there be in having a garden? Why would I want to go out there and bend over and work in that thing with this pinched nerve that I've had in my back? Why would I want to go in there and work and all that stuff to not do anything other than just get worn out in the heat? That would be dumb. So we have to store. So with that in mind, I want to read you something from John Maxwell. I love John Maxwell. John Maxwell is one of my heroes. John Maxwell is a leader of leaders and getting up in age in his 70s, mid-70s now, and authored hundreds of books. So if you ever just Google John Maxwell and you can read anything or podcast, you'll just be intrigued. It's about leadership, though. This is what John says. A leader's lasting value is measured by succession. And here's why. He says, what you leave behind is as important as what you accomplish. So in other words, what I store is as important as what I seed. I can't just seed and forget about it. That's as important. And this is what John says. The natural progression of leadership, achievement comes when you do great things for yourself. Success comes when you empower others to do great things for you. See, this is what Tina did. She empowered me to go to the garden against my will. And she's doing beach ministry, and I am up here in the garden, and it's hotter here than it is there. And so, you know, so she has succeeded. Significance, John says, comes from developing leaders to do great things with you. And legacy comes when you put leaders in position to do great things without you. So my wife passed on some legacy this week. You need to do this without me. So with being able to share a stage with John Maxwell has been my great honor. So you could say, Pastor, know John Maxwell? Yeah, they were on stage together. So anyway, I'd like to meet him someday. But anyway, legacy is another term for story. It's just another way of saying story. Because here's the thing. Filling the storehouse, the legacy, whatever we want to call it, that's what comes after. That's the thing that comes after. So let's kind of jump into the Bible, and we'll look at what Jesus has to say about this. John chapter 12, verses 20 and 21 and 22 right now. Now, among those who went up to worship at the feast were some Greeks. Now, Greeks are on the outside, guys. Greeks are not people who are on the inside. Greeks are not Jewish people. They're not part of the disciples. They're not part of the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, the Sadducees. They're not part of any of these groups. They're on the outside. It just so happens that we're in the New Testament. And it's written in Greek, and a lot of the Greeks are close by. So they're outsiders that have come in. Verse 21. So these Greeks came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and asked him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Great, awesome. Philip went and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. So let's stop right there. I don't know if you caught this the way I did, but I'm really a big fan of anything organized crime, mafia. You want to watch The Godfather? I'll watch it with you, all three of them. I just dig it. I listen to podcasts about Lucky Luciano. My wife's like, Tina's like, why do you listen to that? I'm like, just entertainment. Sometimes I've listened to 3 sermons or some teaching or John Maxwell, and I'm like, right now I just want to listen to something weird. And so I just dig this mafia stuff. It's just intriguing to me. And this just jumped out at me. I'm thinking, you know what? Somebody made us believe that this mafia Sicilian mentality started over in another country, came here, and the mafia mentality was adopted from there. No, Jesus is the OG. Here's where it starts. Jesus is straight up gangster, y'all. I'm loving this. He's Costa Nostra. He is mafia. He is syndicate. This is how it looks right here. Outsiders came to Philip. Philip, local boss. See? Watch something. You'll see what I'm saying. Then Philip goes to Andrew, the capo. See, the capo is the family member who leads the crew. So we've got the local boss, we've got the crew leader, and then they go to Jesus, the capo de capi. He is literally the boss of all bosses. So it's like, hey, listen. They walk up to him and they say, hey, Jesus, we have some Greeks here. They say they make you an offer you can't refuse. I can tell it the way I want. I have a microphone, right? So I love it. I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm literally, my wife is out of town. I'm sitting there on the porch writing this sermon out, and I'm like, this is cool. Is anybody seeing this other than me? No, because there's nobody here but me and the birds. So I'm loving this. So Jesus is literally, so the Greeks come. So they're outsiders. So we go on, verse 23, 4, 5, and 6. And Jesus answered them, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Now, wait, what? Wait, we're going to get back to that. This is where you say that. Truly, truly, I say to you, here is our teaching. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth, it dies. And it dies, it's going to remain alone. But if it dies, it's going to exponentially grow and bear much fruit. Whoever loves his life, they're going to lose it. And whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me. And where I am, there my servants will be. Also, if anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. So, basically what he's saying is at this verse 23, mentality starts to change. Jesus says something, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. This is the only time he said this. We find him saying that his time is not yet in other places. In John chapter 2, verse 4, he tells his mother, my time is not yet. His mom's like, hey, we don't have enough wine. This is a family member. It's getting embarrassing. Do you want your family to be embarrassed? I need you to make some wine. And Jesus is like, Mother, my time is not yet. A little later on in chapter 7, verse 6, and verse 8 again, there's some family members that don't even believe Jesus is the Son of God, don't even believe he's the Messiah. They kind of writing this down. Jesus has a contract on his life in Judea. See, it's the mafia. There's a contract on his life. He can't go back to Judea. They're trying to tell him, well, why don't you go back to Judea? You know, in other words, we'll really see if you are who you say you are. And Jesus is like, it's not yet my time. It's not my time, Mother, to perform miracles or to introduce the Lord to everybody, the Lord in me. And it's not my time to be killed or to be sacrificed. That time's coming. But now is not the time. So what we find is, though, all of a sudden, Greeks appear, outsiders. These are rival crime bosses, so to speak. They're from another part of town. They're from somewhere else. And this is the thing that triggers. This is the thing where Jesus says, that's it right there. There it is. That's the sign I've been waiting for. I would be a little bothered by this. If I'd walked with Jesus for 3.5 years and I'm like, oh, Jesus is so awesome. I just want to be with him all the time. I just want to, just stand in the presence of the Lord. And some Greeks come along. Jesus says, that's the sign I've been looking for. Wait, what? I've been here the whole time. I would like to have seen this. What about your mama? Wouldn't she have liked to? The word of the Lord came through her. Would have been good to come through one of us. But nothing was said about that. I'm just kind of expounding upon it a little bit. It's like, hey, listen. The Greeks are the one that triggered this sign. Jesus said, hey, it's time for the Son of Man to be glorified. I have come to this earth as a man and been seated as a human. So I know what it's like to be human, so you can't say that I don't. Now I have grown in the grace and knowledge of the Lord. I've done just like I've required of you. I have matured the gospel and spread that gospel. And I've even sent people out. And so, just like I expect you, now it's time for a grain of wheat to fall into the earth, because unless I die, we're not going to move any farther past here. Here's where it's going to stay. So he's like, I have to die. And I don't think anybody understood that. Jesus had stored up through these men and women, and he had poured into them, and this was their storehouse. This was their legacy. But there's only one guy that knows what's going on and knows the story and knows the sacrifice that's about to have to take place, and his name's Jesus. There's only one man who knows the value and the seed that has to die, and that's Jesus. There's only one man who knows exactly the cost it took to store the harvest. He knows what it costs to store the harvest. He knows what it's going to cost to carry a cross that doesn't belong to him. He knows the cost, what it's going to cost to go to a hill called Golgotha and be placed on that hill and be placed on a cross and be cruelly crucified, one of the most horrific punishments man has ever known. He knows what it's like for the clouds to cover the face of the earth. During his crucifixion at 3 o'clock, he dies. He knows what it's like to go to hell, come back with the keys to death, hell, and the grave in his hands. He knows what it's going to cost, but he's the only one. He's the only one. And he's the only one who knows what it's going to cost to get that harvest and to get it stored. And he's the only one who knows the key codes to get into the harvest. See, once we store the harvest, not everybody can access it. When I was a kid, we would put corn in the corn bin. And, we had this corn elevator. And I would always ask, why don't we use that every time? But my dad always felt necessary that he would scoop it and throw it in. Why don't you use that corn elevator every time? I'm just thinking, logically. But my dad, it's like, well, I got to go all the way to Ma's and get the other tractor, bring the whole thing. Let's just pitch it in there. But what Dad would do is he would build up these staves, and as he filled that bin completely full of corn, I couldn't access it. I was too little. I couldn't get those boards off. See, the storehouse has to be accessed, and Jesus has the access codes. You and I don't have them. We can lead somebody to the storehouse. We can join hands with Jesus and say, now, Jesus can access, but I can't. That's as far as we can get them. So Jesus has the codes, and he has the codes that's going to free everybody and feed everybody. But let's go back about 1,200 years from Jesus. Let's go back about 3,200 years from now-ish. Let's go back, and there was a man in the Old Testament, and he knew what was going on when everybody else didn't have a clue, and his name was Joseph. He knew what the king's dream was when the king didn't even understand his own dream. He knew. His name was Joseph. One man knew that the entire nation had to store up or there would not be enough to feed people in the bad years that were coming, and his name was Joseph. One man was placed in full control and charge over the entire storehouse and all the storehouses that were built. His name was Joseph. One man held the key codes to unlock the storehouse that saved the lives of millions of people, including his own family. See? So Joseph was this guy. So let's just there's a lot about him, so we're going to briefly hit on Joseph here. Genesis chapter 41, verses 5 through 8. And he fell asleep, and he dreamed a second time, he being the king or the Pharaoh. So he's already had one dream, and that's the one that we usually teach on, but we're going to teach on this one today because of the grain. So the second dream that he had was 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted up 7 ears that were thin and blighted and by the east wind. They were nasty. You ever just see pictures of corn that would grow out maybe in those dust bowls? It was awful. This is what it would look like. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump ears, full ears. And Pharaoh woke, and behold, it was a dream. So he's bothered by this. Verse 8. His spirit was troubled. And sometimes we want to blame something on somebody's personality. Well, she's just relentless. Why is she aggravating us so much to get this done? Why will he not relent on that? It's not, his personality is driving me crazy. It's not his personality. Maybe it's the Lord driving him. I just feel like we have to get this done. The Lord has laid this on my heart. So let's go. So in the morning he was troubled, and he sent for magicians and everybody. Nobody could interpret this dream. And he's like, is there anybody that can help us in the entire land? And this one dude's like, yeah. I was in prison. I hate to mention it because I don't want you to remember that. But I was in prison. You had put me there with the baker, and the baker and I had a dream. And this Hebrew dude interpreted the dreams. He said he would die and I would live, and that's exactly what happened. He seems to be right on. I believe I'd give him a shot. So where is he? He's still in prison. I forgot to get him out. So he's still in prison. And so Pharaoh had 2 dreams. The first one was 7 fat cows, 7 healthy cows, plump cows. These are the ones that you want to take to the market. These are the good ones. So he dreams they come out of the Nile. And so this was a dream of 7 wonderful plump years. And immediately they began to start grazing on the bank. So it was even the grass on the banks of the Nile grew. So it was so lush, so wonderful, the cows didn't even have to migrate to a pasture. They literally were just feeding right there on the bank of the Nile. And then these 7 nasty thin cows come up, consume them, but they didn't change. Their appearance didn't change. They still looked the same. And so they call in Joseph, and Joseph's he's like, I hear you can interpret my dream. Joseph's like, I can't do anything. But I know a guy. I know a guy that can do it for you. I know a guy's name's the Lord, and the Lord can reveal to me, but if he wants to, but I'm it's not me, it's going to be the Lord. Just so keep that in mind. So he gives him the dream, and he says, hey, the 2 dreams are one. They mean the same. And they mean the same. And the reason God's given you 2 is because he's given it urgency. When God says something twice in Scripture, that means, or in a prophecy, that means he's declared it to be so. That means it's already set into play, and he's saying this is going to happen. And it's going to happen in an urgent manner. And he says there's going to be 7 years of the most wonderful harvest. I mean, we can throw a seed on the hard ground and it'll grow. It's going to be the best that the world has ever known. But there's going to be 7 years come after that. It's going to be so bad, it'll consume everything from those 7 years prior. And it's going to be so bad, we'll even forget those 7 years that happened before. Now think about this. Show you what this looks like. There's a young couple. They want to get married. They just love each other. They've met each other. They're just Google-eyed. Oh, I just love you. I love you. I love you. Oh, get a room. So So they just love each other, and they want to get married. They get married, and a few years later, you see them, and they're walking separately into the courtroom because they're going through a divorce. They're going through a divorce. Why are you going through a divorce? Well, he does do this, and she does it, all this stuff. All they can think about is what's bad. Right. See, what's bad has consumed what was good. Can't think back on what was good. You know, maybe I could challenge you right now. What was it that made you guys come together? Because you got to think back on those good years. You got to find what was there in the beginning to get you through what's the bad, the now of the bad. So we've got these 7 years, and these 7 bad years are going to consume the good years, and so badly that they're even going to be forgotten. So Joseph instructs the Pharaoh, says, I'm going to tell you what I would do. I think this is what you need to do. You need to get somebody in charge, and you need to put them in charge of all of this, and you need to build storehouses, and you need to seed, you need to grow, you need to mature, you need to harvest, and you need to store over and over and over. Rinse and repeat, over and over and over. It's going to be so good, and take a fifth of everything that comes in and put it in storehouses, because when this hits, it's going to be bad, bad, bad. And nobody's going to store up, because you know what we do when we have extra? We waste. We don't store, we waste. So he's like, they're not going to store, they're going to waste. They're going to buy another car. They're going to buy another truck. You know, they're not going to store. Store as much as you can in the years that you have, because in the bad years, we're going to need it. So Joseph was chosen to be that person. Pharaoh said, you be that person. Where else can we find in history where the king of an entire nation, the most powerful nation in all the earth at the time, where the king can hold hands, partner with a slave, and save the entire world? I mean, that's not going to work. And then he puts him as number 2 in charge, only under him. So Genesis chapter 41, staying there, let's look at verse 57. Moreover, all of the earth came. I mean, this is a lot of people. When all the earth comes, that's a lot, guys. And they came to Egypt, but notice they came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was so severe over all the earth. There's all the earth again. So we have all the earth is showing up. All the earth has a need. That sounds like now, doesn't it? Sounds to me like now. Joseph represents Christ. So let's not forget that. Joseph's going to represent Christ. The storehouse represents the church. I don't want to hurt the church's feelings here. I'm a church guy. I'm just going to tell it like it is. People didn't come to Egypt for salvation. They came to Joseph for salvation. See, without Joseph, there would be no storehouses. Joseph could have went to Lo-Debar, which is a dry and barren place in the middle of nowhere in that region, and he could have saved the world from there. But God chose Egypt. So I'll say it this way. Our churches are important, but they're empty storehouses without Christ. That's all we're ever going to be, is the empty storehouse. So are they important? Yes. Is this church important? Yes. But we're only an empty storehouse. And empty storehouses can't feed anybody. It's not going to happen. So notice that wording in verse 57, all the earth. See, all the earth has a need. We need to register that. All the earth has a need. And that need is only going to be met by Jesus. It's not going to be met by an empty storehouse. So where does the world run when they have a need? The church, the storehouse. They're not looking for the church. They're looking for an answer, and Jesus is the answer. But that's where they know they can run to. Here's the bad part. Some people will choose to run to something other than the church or to the Lord, and it's not going to get better. They may run to other people who will tell them what they want to hear. They may run to another person that I'll make that person my spouse. I'll get a new spouse because the other one, I didn't really care for that one. So, we have a expendable, mentality in our generations today. I'll just get a new one because that one I don't care for. So I'm going to get a new spouse. Well, after a while, what's going to be the deal with that one? We got to be careful where we're going to run to, because not everywhere has a full storehouse. So 7 years of famine was going to be so terrible. I just want to reiterate this, that it would make us forget. It's going to make them forget how good it really was. This is the way the enemy works. The enemy works this way. He wants to detour us from storing because he knows storing is what feeds a generation. Storing is what feeds those around us. Storing is good for everybody around us. He'll keep us detoured from that. He'll downplay the severity of the bad years. The bad years not going to be that bad. Won't be that bad. Years ago, it was like 35 years ago, I was telling Marcona Colon, Kendrick Marcona Colon, goes to church with us here. I was telling him, I call him by both names. But anyway, I was telling him about a service I did like forever ago. It's like 35 years ago. And I put this kid in a chair. And I got this little makeshift strap, these little clips you put together. And I said, okay, now what you have to do is you refuse to wear your seatbelt. You're driving down the interstate. You're going over the hill there toward Carthage. And all of a sudden, there's an accident. But you refuse to wear your seatbelt. Now what I want you to do is I'm going to stopwatch. And I'm going to yell accident. And I'm going to, then you got to put your seatbelt on to save your life. Okay, so accident, boom. Oh, sorry, you didn't get your seatbelt on, did you? It takes like less than a second for an accident to occur. You can't get your seatbelt on in that time. So I said, okay, so seatbelts aside. Now we're going to do it a different way. You're on the same road. You're going the same direction. You don't have a seatbelt on. Same accident. Now, you've been saying this all along. You know what? I'll just give my heart to the Lord when I get to the end of this thing. Or right now, I just want to do what I want to do. I want my own agenda. I want to create my own doctrine, so to speak. So I don't need Jesus right now. I'm going to need him later on. Okay, so with that mentality, you're in the car. Okay, the accident's about to happen. And so when I yell accident, you got to cry out to the Lord for salvation because you refuse to do it now. Okay, so accident, boom, too late. You have just lost your life because you didn't have a seatbelt on. You didn't have time to put it on, and you just went to hell because you died and you didn't go to heaven. You didn't know Jesus. Because the devil made sure that you put everything off. I'll store later. Now's not important. I'll do it later. He'll keep us, this is what the enemy, keep us from understanding how important those around us are. If I don't store, they're not going to store when it comes their time. If I don't harvest, they're not going to harvest when it comes their time. They're not going to, you know what? I tell people this all the time. You know who the greatest examples of marriage are for people? Their parents. Every person will model marriage after what they see in their parents. Unless they've never had parents, then they'll model it after one that they've implanted. I want one like that one. So everybody will be that type of a husband, wife, or parent. So in other words, we don't. The devil will make sure that we want to make this about us and not about them. See, I have this disdain for this mentality, and it was told to me a month or so back. Counselors are telling people this. You need to focus on you. You need to do what's best for you. I just want to go and smack those people in the face and ask for forgiveness afterwards. I'm like, this person told me, said, I need to think about me. It's time to think about me. You're a father. You don't have that luxury. There's a portion that's built in for you to think about you. You have plenty of time to think about you. You know what? I don't want to be a dad anymore. Sorry. You can walk away. You're still going to be a dad. You're just going to be one that's wrong. You know what? I don't like that job anymore. I'm just not going to show up. I'm sorry. You have obligations. Well, the counselor said, my therapist said I needed to do what's best for me. Well, you don't have that luxury. You know, the only one that has that right to only think of themselves is a baby. And that baby doesn't care if it's hungry. It's going to let every one of us know it. And none of us are going to hold it against it. It's the only one in all of God's creation that says it's all about me. But there comes a time when they grow and mature out of that. So I'm going to focus on me. It's going to be about me. See, I don't like that mentality because that's selfish. See, he's going to convince us that we could store later. Right now, it's all about me. I got to tell you this. I had a guy one time, and I'm not good at counseling. Oh, Lord, I'm not good at it. And people come to the office, and I'm like, thank the Lord Tina's in here, or this would be awful. And I'm like, when we get finished, I'm like, we can rub some dirt on that. And I mean, I don't know. I don't say things well. So, I think I do okay here, but there, just don't do it well. And I don't counsel like that well. I let somebody else do that who's good at it. And had a guy one time, somebody called us and they wanted us to go to a lady's house. We didn't know these people. We hadn't had the church here, but maybe a few months. And we go sit down with a 30-something-year-old son living with his mother and won't help with anything, won't help with any kind of rent, any kind of groceries, anything. And and so we're talking to him, and he's like, he was threatening to kill himself, probably because she wouldn't give him money or something. And I'm like, so what's going on? He's like, well, so we finally dissected it down. He said, I'm miserable. Well, why? He said, well, I hate my job. And Tina just spoke up. She said, well, what is it that you want to do? Well, I want to be a race car driver. Well, here, let me give you some crayons. I need you to draw me a picture of what you want. You need to grow up, son. You're not going to be a race car driver. You're 30-something years old. You're living with your mama. You know what? Go to work tomorrow and bring your mom some money into here. Or go get your own place. Try that one. Gosh, I'll never forget. We walked out there and I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't think this guy will ever come to church. Ever. And if he has, he may be sitting here right now. I don't know. But I'm thinking we just told him everything about, it's like, look, rub some dirt on it and go to work. You're not going to be a race car driver. You're 30-something years old. So the thing is the devil's going to be good at that. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 and 20, he says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. Moth, rust, stealing, thievery, it's going to happen. But lay up for yourselves treasures. He just took the earth out and put heaven in. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy. Thieves can't touch it, can't steal it. It's devastating to work hard and get something stolen from you. We're fighting with that right now. Tina and I are fighting with that right now. With an investment in Florida because of Helene. Helene just didn't hit here because we are now officially in a flood zone. We may lose the place that we have down there. And we're praying and we're fighting. It's like, look, I think I finally got my wife convinced if we ever get a thumbs up, we're selling it. Because it's hard to put that much money in something for that many years and lose every dime of it. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of retirement money. That's a lot of could have been invested somewhere else. Because we always do real estate. We did real estate. So it's devastating. You just have to say, look, this is a battle I can't fight. All I got to do is just keep praying that the Lord's going to take care of this because I can't get any madder at the people that I am. So, how do we store up? We say, I don't know how to store up. You're the pastor. I'm not the pastor. How do I store up? I don't know how to do this. Well, I'm going to tell you how we do this. With every step that we take that's closer to Jesus than we were, that's storing up. Every time we bend our knees and pray, that's storing up. Every time we say, you know what, I don't know if we're going to lose this investment or not. I'm going to pray and I'm going to store up treasures in heaven. Because what's the worst thing that could happen? I just don't have it anymore. I lost a bunch of money. Well, it's not the end of the world. It's bad, but it's not the end of the world. I didn't lose my salvation. Briefly, we might from time to time. Yeah, when Tina's talking to him, she just starts getting mad. She throws the phone. I'm like, yeah, she got mad. But see, every time that we read our Bible, every time that we pray, every time we walk in these doors and we gather ourselves together, we don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. Every time we come in, you know what? We are storing up. Every time. Every time we decide that, yes, we're going to engage ourselves in a small group or a Bible study. Do you know why we push small groups so much? It's because you could quit church, but you can't quit family. You can't quit the family. You won't do it. So we get a connection with people. That's why we won't quit. That's why these are storing up opportunities. Every time I give, that's a storing up opportunity. Why is it so important to store? Why is it so important to store? Because the harvest stored is what feeds people. And it's just going to go to waste right here. It's just going to go to waste. So storing is preparing. Jesus gives us this parable in Matthew chapter 25. He's 5 wise. He calls them wise virgins, 5 foolish virgins. The 5 wise brought extra oil for the bridegroom. That's you and I. We're the bride. He's the groom. And when we don't prepare, then we're going to have to. We're going to default to somebody. In other words, I didn't prepare, so I'm going to go to you who did prepare, and I want some of yours. And there's not enough for you and I both. Well, you don't understand. I'm not really concerned about you. I just want what you have. See, they didn't care. Those lazy virgins, they didn't care if these people, if the wise ones missed Jesus, just as long as they consumed and plundered someone else's storehouse because they didn't prepare themselves. So I'm landing the plane, Philippians 2, verse 12. Paul says it this way, and I want to make sure that I don't want to quote the one that's widely quoted section of it. I want to make sure we get the front of it. Not so, or so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence. In other words, mom and dad ain't always going to be here. You can't base your relationship with the Lord on somebody else's prayers years ago. He says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It's your job. But as we're finishing up, Genesis chapter 41, going back to 35, verse 35. 3 words, store up grain. Joseph says, store up grain. Back in those days, you can't slaughter a million head of cattle and store it because they had no refrigeration, so it would spoil. Can't store up that. Can't store up fruit. It would go bad. Can't store up potatoes. It has to be grain. Grain's the only thing that would be stored up that they could access for years. Grain in the Bible is grain anywhere is what bread is made out of. But grain in the Bible and bread in the Bible have the same meaning. They mean provision. They mean provision. And do you know that Jesus called himself a few things in the Bible? He said, hey, I'm the light of the world. He says, I'm the, well, I just went blank. But he says, I am the bread of life. One of the things he calls himself is basically, I think there's 7 I ams. I'm the bread of life. So store up for yourselves bread, grain. Store up. If we don't store up Jesus, then we're storing up the wrong thing. Store up for yourselves grain. Store up for yourselves bread. The bread of life. Jesus is our provision. Jesus is our life. He's our Joseph. He has the access codes. He's our salvation. Everything hinges on Jesus. Doesn't revolve around us. Sorry to tell you that. We have to be careful, however, what we're storing. Because we could store the wrong thing. We got to make sure it's bread. So I want to challenge you with this thought. Jesus is here. He's here. The storehouse is full. We're not talking about a half-empty storehouse. We're talking about a full storehouse. And I'm asking you, please do not leave empty. Please do not leave half-filled. Don't leave here with a partial filling. I'm going to challenge you to this thought. If you were in this region 3,200 years ago and the entire earth was under a famine and you had one place to go to get life-changing bread, you would leave with every bit you could get. You would leave with all of it you could get. You wouldn't just say, no, I think I'm good. I'm good. I've got 1,000 miles to go. I'm not coming back. Don't leave here half empty. Don't leave here half full. You're the only one. Paul told us plainly, you're the only one that can make this decision for you. You're the only one. So I want you to stand with me, please. And I just want to ask this question. I want you to know the Lord the way your favorite spiritual person knows the Lord. I want you to know the Lord that way. But first, we've got to say, Lord, I need you. I need you in my life. I invite you to, I want to know you. Paul says, I want to know you in Colossians 3:10, I think it is. Maybe it's Philippians 3:10. He says, I want to know you. I want to know you in the power of your resurrection, the fellowship of your sufferings, and even unto death. Well, we're really good with the power part, not the suffering part. The death part, we're not. Yeah, so, in other words, Paul says, I want to know you in all ways. Right now, we're just wanting to know him. So I want to ask you to pray a prayer that says, Lord, I want to know you today in a powerful way, in a salvational way. So with your heads bowed and your eyes closed, if you're visiting with us, this is kind of how we've done things before, and I've done this for a lot of years. We just pray out loud together, and we just help one another, and we just say, Lord, come into my life. I'm just asking you in. I'm inviting you in. Because I'm going to tell you something. I don't care how good you are at running your life. You ain't running it that good if you ain't letting Jesus run it. You're not running it well. I'm telling you right now. So let's pray this prayer out loud together. Everybody together. Dear Jesus, I invite you into my heart. I'm seeking you. I repent of my sins. I confess my sins. And I receive salvation that can only come from you. I invite you into my heart to forgive me of my sins. And I thank you for this wonderful victory, for this good day. And I thank you for salvation. In your name I pray. Amen.